Coming up next on Access Framingham TV, we visit Southeast Asia on the Travels with Jack show with my very special guest, the host of Travels with Jack, Mr. Jack Barron. Stay tuned. Hello, I'm Bill Rabkin. Normally, you would see Jack Barron, the host of Travels with Jack, on Access Framingham TV, right here in this chair. But today we have a very special guest on the show, and that guest is Jack himself. Our guests share with the audience a recent trip, a vacation, a cruise, or maybe a day trip right here in New England. You'll see their photos and hear about the exciting places they have visited. On this month's show, I'm very pleased to welcome Jack Barron as a traveler and guest on his own program. Jack and I have been bringing you this show since the year 2000, and although Jack has traveled often and visited many countries around the globe, this is the first time he has shared his travel adventures with you. In January 2017, Jack toured Southeast Asia, where he visited Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand, and returned home through Japan. We won't be able to cover his entire journey in 1 hour, so be sure to check the program schedule on the Access Framingham website for future episodes and enjoy seeing Jack's entire trip. Now, what parts of the world have you visited? Please be a guest on Travels with Jack. Share your travel experience with our viewing audience. Just contact us here at Access Framingham Television and let us know you'd like to be a guest. You can phone AFTV at 508-875-5434, or you can send an email message to info@accessfram.tv. Our associate producer will contact you to make arrangements for you to be on our show here on Access Framingham TV. If you don't live in Massachusetts, we would be pleased to assist you with your travel to the Access Framingham studio. And now, let me welcome Jack Barron as a guest on Travels with Jack. It's lovely to have you in that chair, Jack.
Bill, thank you, and thank you for all the wonderful, I mean this sincerely, all the wonderful work you do for AFTV and for my show. And
well, thank you.
And when you said to me, it's time for me to be a guest, I said, all right, I'll do it.
Yes, we've been talking about Jack being a guest since the year 2000 when we launched the show, and he's finally agreed.
Okay.
Let me introduce you to our audience a little bit. I know that you live in Southborough with your wife, Louise.
Yep.
And Roxy, your dog. What kind of dog is Roxy?
German Shepherd. And very spoiled. Very spoiled. Extra spoiled.
Professionally, Jack is in the food importing and distribution business.
Yes.
He's the president of his company. Jack and Louise have 2 kids, a daughter who is an executive at Google in Los Angeles, and a new mom.
Yes.
Of Sloan, their first child.
Yep. Her and Matt have a little girl, and she is beautiful. Beautiful
and
little girl.
Their son is a vice president in a real estate development and management company here in Massachusetts. Jack is very active in...
And he and his wife have a beautiful daughter, too. A 2.5-year-old.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yes.
Jack is active in political things, particularly relating to the Republican Party. He grew up in Newton, where he went to high school, is a graduate of UMass Amherst, got into the food business initially as a restaurateur and decided that that was not his calling, and switched
You're too kind.
switched to the
sales area
in the food industry and has done that ever since. Spent about 9 years living in California, and now, as I said, he and Louise live in Southborough.
Yes.
So tell us about this trip, Jack.
Well, this trip happened, as you said, I was a little bit involved in politics and following trends. And I said, I think we're going to have a Republican president. And I said, I didn't know if it would be Mr. Trump, but I said, I think the people are ready for a change. And I said, one thing that might happen is I said, I think there'll be a new direction in how we relate to North Korea. I don't know what's going to happen. I still don't. But I said, you know what? I want to go to Korea while I can. So I said to Mrs. Barron, let's go to Korea. She said, you go. I'll stay home and watch the dog. I said, come on, this is going to be a terrific trip. You can go. I don't mind. So,
Okay.
all right. So I contacted a firm that I had traveled with previously called Abercrombie and Kent. And they had a trip for Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand. And I said, well, you know what? I'll go to Korea on my own, add it in, and then, take the rest of the trip. And so that's what I did. So I booked the trip with Delta, which I think partnered with Korea Airlines.
Okay.
My wife and my son and daughter-in-law and little Paige took me to dinner at the Hyatt at Logan Airport. Didn't know if they'd see me again, so I guess they wanted to take me for a nice dinner. Yeah, we had a lovely dinner there. And then they drove me over to the Delta terminal. I gave them my luggage and boarded a plane to JFK and got to JFK in New York. Got everything rechecked in. I think I had to do my passport and everything there.
Right.
And boarded the Korean Airlines jet and flew directly to Seoul, South Korea. Long flight,
Non-stop
Yep. Very nice airline. Really was a
Good.
lovely service. Food was very good. It was a nice flight.
Good.
Got to Korea. I don't know when they're going to start some of the pictures, but
Sure.
I had they had a nice driver pick me up from the hotel. I stayed at the Park Hyatt Hotel.
There we are. There's
Okay.
a map of the whole region of Southeast Asia. The big country, of course, is China, but you didn't visit China.
I did not
On this trip?
on this trip. I'd been to China. I love China. I should go back.
If we go to the next map, it's a little closer.
And there we go. So
You can see South Korea at the top.
yep. So I flew right into South Korea.
Go to the next one.
Oh, look at that. There you go. Yep.
And Jack's journey, his adventure began there in Seoul, South Korea.
Yep.
After spending some time there, he flew to Hanoi in Vietnam.
Saigon is Ho Chi Minh City, but
I
they
beg
still
your
call
pardon.
it most
Saigon.
people refer to it as Saigon.
And then
Went all through Vietnam, starting in the north, down to the south, which is Saigon. And then we flew into Siem Reap in Cambodia, where Angkor Wat is, which is really what we concentrated on seeing, which is actually multiple temples. They always show you the one iconic temple, but there really were many
of them,
Many.
yeah.
One of them we went into, as the pictures roll along, we may see it, they filmed Raiders of the Lost Ark. Oh, that's where I started, in the KAL Lounge. And then that's the hotel. Was a great, great hotel. And Seoul in general reminded me a lot of Tokyo. Very wide boulevards, lots of high rises. People were just delightful. I took the subway. They must have thought I was old. Some people got up to have a seat
Give you
for
a
me.
seat?
Yeah. But I mean, they were very, very hospitable people.
Good.
This was interesting. In the room, they had a big block of granite. Granite is very big in Korea. They must have, large amounts of it because they do a lot of work in granite. And they had cut out, and that was the shower. So I know these pictures aren't typical. This is the
I was going
area.
to say, we don't often have a guest who starts with the shower.
I thought about it. I says, none of the guests ever show the hotel rooms. I says, but those things interest me.
They do, yes.
This was the neighborhood, Samseong. I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, where the hotel was. And
Next.
but and it was the beginning of the new year in 2017. And that's a big department store sign in Seoul.
For your superior life.
Yes. And very big, wide boulevards, lots of good-sized cars. These are some women who were in traditional garb from the ancient years. And Korea has a long history of war. And, you know, I visited one of the old palaces, and they kind of tell you all the different dynasties and the wars with. These countries all had that's it, Kong Palace, and it was a whole compound of, you know, very old buildings, not elaborate as like in China. For people who've been to the Forbidden City in China, the Chinese used much more gold and bright colors, reds, greens, more elaborate. This was a little more conservative. Korea also, this time of the year, I was there January, it was pretty chilly.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. I bought a good jacket with a nice lining and waterproof that I didn't think would really be necessary.
Yeah.
You know, I was expecting warm weather. It's a good thing I brought it. I had to buy gloves when I was there. Yes. It was really pretty cold. Colder than Boston. So, you know, when you hear about Korea, it's not always the time of the year. You notice the granite stone. This palace must be at least 1,000 years old, and they were using a lot of granite then. So, surprisingly, the Koreans have a big use for granite. It was very, very big. There's some of the ornateness of the palace. But as I say, compared to China, I found it much more muted, closer to Japan. Japan doesn't use as much bright color and stuff as the Chinese people do. But you see, it's pretty elaborate. And you can see the woodwork. There's also, in the structure of the wood, you can't see it, there's different symbols for different things in Korean life. That's the...
what was this room used for
This
in the
was,
day?
I think, where the king held court. And that's kind of the throne area. And they had a big area, see, coronation. They had a coronation there. And the roofs are all done with clay tiles. I found this throughout all the older structures in Korea. The new stuff, though, really very impressive. Lots and lots of very modern, high-rise buildings. I thought it seemed, you know, they claim they're not rich, but I saw a lot of, you know, very impressive big sedans, and laid out very much like Tokyo with the wide boulevards. This is more of all the hand-painted ceilings and everything that you saw in this palace. More, and, you know, sitting rooms, entertainment. The heat for these rooms comes from underneath. So there's a cellar, and they used to have pots where they burned wood and stuff. Once in a while, the places would catch on fire, so they had to put out the fires. But that's how they heated. And my guide told us that very often where you see Korean people sitting on the floor and eating their dinner and everything, it's not that they didn't like tables and chairs, it's that it was cold and the floor was where the heat was. So they stayed on the floors to stay warm. So some interest. This was also, I believe, in one of the palaces, a little more ornate.
Very interesting.
Yep. It was really a very, very big, you can see kind of a big kettle there. And what they used to do is put wood in those and heat up the area. So it was almost like an outdoor lamp function as well as heating water, hot water. But as I say, it was very chilly there. So, you know, they do need to utilize heat.
Yeah. More granite?
More granite. Yep. And again, a lot of young people come and dress up in the costumes of antiquity and kind of show off that while they're in this historical palace area. And this was right downtown, not far from Seoul City Hall.
Does that looked like Santa Claus in the...
No Santa Claus. But you can see all the workmanship that they do.
Yes. It's a nice photo.
Yep. But once again, and they had some granddaughter or something of one of the rulers was living in one of these little kind of huts that were part of the palace, and she lived there till I think like 1965 or something. So she was the last of the long line of the kings of Korea. For some reason, I never think of Korea as having royalty, a monarchy, but yes, they did. You know, and just as you know, like any dynasty, like China and Japan, of course, had the rulers. This is more of the same palace, and just showing you kind of all the detail. This might be the gift.
That looks modern.
Yes, they had a nice gift shop that they had built, very modern. And I'm showing you there are some of the different foods that they featured in the gift shop. The food, I got to tell you, the food in Korea, not necessarily what I'm showing you here, but I had very good food there. The hotel, which you very often have in all these Asian hotels, had a fabulous buffet.
Yeah.
And I found this throughout the entire trip. Every hotel we were in, whether it was in Korea, this is a big shopping area in Seoul, and you walk down there and they have all the steamed stuffed buns and all kinds of different, they do a donut version. She was very busy, this donut lady. There was a big long line for the donuts. They were very good. See, oh, look at that. There's the line. See, my memory in the pictures held up.
Yes. I don't see as many signs in Korean and English or Korean in another language as you do in some other countries where it's English plus the local tongue.
I didn't really notice that so much. They did have transliteration, like I showed you that Samsung bus stop.
Right.
I did not have any trouble with language. Most of the people, I think, spoke English or understood what I was saying. Yeah. Of course, I was a tourist. I was with guides. So it's a little bit different. Here's the steam buns, which are very similar to what you would get in China or Chinese restaurants, where they stuff them with different meats and such. And this is my trip. And you see the winter coat. You can see the cold weather. I took a trip up to the DMZ zone, demilitarized zone. This is the border of North Korea. And as you drive up, you see in South Korea, everything is modern and built up and lots of everything. And they show you the other side of the highway, and there's a river between South Korea and North Korea and a big fence. And South Korea, they don't have as many trees. They don't have the buildings. I'm sorry, North Korea, they don't have as many trees.
Yeah.
They don't have as many buildings. You see a stark difference.
Reminds me of Berlin before the wall fell.
Yes. I've never been there, but I'm sure it's the same kind of thing. You see the economic development in the South is so tremendous compared to what you see in the North that it's surprising. Now, one of the questions I did ask several of the guides that I had several different guides, is did you feel the North Korean people wanted to leave North Korea and live in the South? And they all said no.
Really?
Yeah. So, Donald, if you're listening.
Did you ask why?
Yeah, they said they understand their system and they know how to work the system they're in. So the feeling was amongst quite a few of the guides I had that a lot of the North Korean people, even though their system was very different than the South, a lot of them knew how to navigate it. So where we would say, oh my God, look how poor they are and they're starving and everything else, could be true, but they still felt they could operate within that system. And I got the sense there was also a large black market in North Korea. This is at the DMZ zone. There's a lot of different statues and things commemorating the armistice and how the United States helped South Korea in the war. Tremendous, tremendous dedication to the United States. I found in this whole DMZ area. We still have a lot of troops in South Korea, but the Korean people seemed tremendously thankful for the United States' involvement in South Korea. It really seemed very genuine. It wasn't any, Yankee go home kind of stuff.
Right.
They really seemed very fond of the United States and what we've helped them with. This is in the DMZ kind of history room and shows you a little bit of the area. This is, you were able to go, there was a tunnel. There were actually, I believe, 3 or 4 tunnels that the North Koreans built to invade South Korea. But they went very deep. And where this DMZ visitor center is, you have the opportunity to go down this very long ramp and see the tunnel. And it really, I think, goes down maybe 300 feet below the earth. And it was pretty wide. And the South Koreans tell you that the North planned to invade the South and bring huge amounts of military people under these tunnels to invade South Korea. And there's an example. They show you a picture of the long tunnel down and the tunnel itself. That was my guide that day. I did not go all the way down the tunnel. I went down part of the way and I said, okay, I get a gist of it. I'll come back up because I get a little bit lazy climbing up 300 feet. Now that's the North Korean side over there. And you can see the mountains and how there isn't too much going on versus South Korea, which I'm hoping we'll get into more South Korean pictures as we move along here. But the North Korean side was very desolate. This is a large wall, I believe, dedicated to the service people in the United States who lost their lives in the Korean War. And they really, this was a train that originally had the unification into what is now North Korea. But it was cut off, and there's a bridge there that you can walk that kind of shows you the original way the country was unified. A lot of South Koreans do want to see a reunification of North and South Korea. That's something they're very anxious for. They have built this very impressive modern railway station up near the DMZ that is supposed to eventually link the North Korean railway, see the sign, to Pyongyang?
Yes.
They built it, but you can't go.
Of course.
It's kind of like Massachusetts. We always have the new train taking you to New Bedford, but it never quite gets there.
Yes.
So with Pyongyang, it's the same thing. They're going to take you, and here's again the unification platform, because they want to be able to have you on Korean Railroad, which, I don't know, when you were in the railroad software business, did you ever do anything for Korea?
No, we were in Europe.
In just Europe, okay. But their dream is to tie in a trans-Eurasian railway network. So they want to get you all the way from South Korea up through North Korea and link you into Europe, which could be done. It's really not, a crazy idea. The most of the railway tracks, I believe, are there. I don't know the condition of everything. But
are there a lot of trains within South Korea from city to city?
there was a lot of subway. I don't know if I did not know whether they were all trains. I was only there in Seoul. But the subways were quite efficient, very nice, very clean.
How did you get from Seoul to and from the DMZ?
Bus.
Bus.
I took a bus trip that the hotel arranged for me with the tour guide. That's the bridge I mentioned to you earlier, the Freedom Bridge. And there it is, that you can cross. It stops now, but it used to go to North Korea. But I took a tour that the hotel arranged, just kind of like with a Gray Line company. And we had a great guide. And they took us up and showed us all around and guided us. Very nice. I didn't need a long notice. But there is another section of the DMZ that you can visit where I think you actually can look at the North Korean soldiers. I didn't do that, and I didn't know about it till I took this trip. But you have to give advance notice, I think 2-3 days, maybe a week, to get onto that separate trip to go see the North Korean soldiers. So if people are planning Korea, look into that. You may want to, actually go to the second trip, which takes you another maybe 45 minutes up further, I guess it would be north, toward North Korea, and you see that other section. That's where you always see on television with the soldiers who are, kind of pointing at each other.
Yeah.
This is Seoul City Hall, and I love Seoul. And you can see the old building, and then they built the new next to it. And I really was very impressed with Seoul. I think I'll have more food. This was in one of the big department stores where, similar to Tokyo, you go down to the bottom of the department stores and they have these huge food courts. And that's what they had here. Yeah. So they had very, very beautiful pastry. And you can see the decorations. They do very, very nice work. They're pastry people. This was a rolling belt in the bottom of this department store. I think the department store might have been called Lotto, which is...
and the food goes past.
And the food goes past you and you grab stuff. Yeah. And then they kind of give you a ticket, and they stamp your ticket or whatever and you pay. Very busy. The place was jumping.
Did you sample the food?
I did. I ate down there. I ate at, I'm not sure which place I ate at. It wasn't that particular place. It was more of a, I think, traditional Korean with noodles and stuff. I had a little trouble. Oh, that's at the Lottie department store. And that was after I paid. They gave me a little timer kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they buzz you, well, like we have in many of our restaurants.
Yes.
And they buzzed me when my lunch was ready.
Yeah.
And then I went up. This was interesting, too. I had not seen this before. They had a 3D foot scanner in the department store. So instead of them measuring your feet like we traditionally do with a measurer, they put me on the three-dimensional scanner, and it scanned me and made some noise and stuff. And then it told me what size shoe I needed for my foot. So I hadn't seen this in the U.S., but I guess that's the future of how to get your foot measured.
Probably.
So the days of those metal things where they, said, oh, you got an 11, and they pushed the thing to see how wide you are, those days are over. More of the beautiful pastry. Yeah. And this must be the subway. The subway was, as you can see, very, very nice. A lot of shops down there. I felt very safe. I'm not sure that I necessarily was, but I did feel very safe. And they have, this was interesting. You don't have the situation like we have in the U.S. where you can fall into the railway itself. There are glass doors that prevent you from getting onto the tracks, and when the train comes in, it opens up, and the train doors open up, and you can get on the train.
It's like some of the airport trains here in the States.
Yes, exactly. Same kind of thing. So in their subway, at least this part of it that I was on, you had that double protection where people could not gain access to the tracks. This was interesting too. While I was there, the United States was supposedly giving to South Korea some new additional military hardware. I had heard it on the news, and sure enough, out of my hotel window, I saw these black helicopters carrying, I think you can see it, these big cargo pallets. And it was kind of a similar defense system to what I believe Israel has. They call it, I think, Iron Dome. And it was there. There was some threats from North Korea. And I think at that time, the United States, this was early January, so it must have still been Obama was president, but offered the Koreans some military hardware to help make them feel a little less nervous about North Korea shooting a missile into South Korea.
Yeah, did you get a sense that the people on the street whom you met are concerned?
Very concerned. The people I did talk to all said they were very concerned.
Yeah.
They said they go on with their everyday life, but it is a concern. They feel that North Korea is being very provocative, and I think to a degree they're used to it. I mean, because this has been North Korea's policy since the 50s.
Yeah, but it seems to have escalated recently.
And I didn't get into too much what the alternative is to, they talk unification. I didn't get a sense to say, well, what if, forget about unification. I didn't go there. This trip I arranged, sometimes when I go on other trips, like I've been to Israel where the military meets with us, and they do give you more introspection into what's going on. This was when I arrived in Korea. Oh my God, beautiful modern airport. This was the new airport, and they had a nice automobile, picked me up, took me to the hotel. And this is the buffet I mentioned at that Park Hyatt. And yeah, oh my God, the breakfast was great. You eat a great breakfast, you don't need lunch, or you eat a little snack and have a nice dinner. But they had beautiful charcuterie and cheeses. And I think we'll show some more of the food. Tons of pastry. I found this. Vietnam had beautiful pastry. Say what you will about the French being there in Vietnam for 100 plus years. They taught them how to make beautiful croissants, Danish, the breads. This again is Korea, but the hotel really did a great job with their breakfast buffet. And they had hot Korean dishes. That's what these are. They served them in the traditional crockery. And the room itself, I thought, was a good-looking room. This was a restaurant I went to with the fabulous Korean steak. They do two big items they're famous for, bagoki, and the other one, it's skipping me at the moment, but it's a like a ribeye almost. And they have hot charcoals right at your table, and they grill the steak for you at the table. And it was delicious. This is their new airport. I believe it's in Incheon. And you can see it's really beautiful. Now, I flew from Korea, and I believe this is arriving in Hanoi. Welcome to Hanoi. And in Hanoi, this is the airport, you see. Literally, there must have been 30 of these Samsung signs all over the airport. And Samsung, which is a Korean company, has a huge investment in Vietnam. They have one plant I saw that I think they said employed 300,000 to 400,000 people.
My goodness.
It was tremendous. And Vietnam, they have a huge amount of people on motorcycles. And Honda owns that market. You can start with a Honda motorcycle, $1,000. A lot of the women drive a Vespa. It's a little more...
Motor scooter?
Yep. This was the hotel I was at in Hanoi. This was the Metropole Hotel. And I had a opportunity to meet Senator Kerry when I was down there for breakfast. I had also the opportunity to thank him for his many years of service for the Commonwealth, and I let him know a few of their foreign policies I wasn't too wild about. I won't go. Bill asked me not to go into it, but I did speak up. And this is the breakfast at that Metropole Hotel. Again, great breakfast. They had a lot of Vietnamese, and I would say in general, international kind of items. Viewed as the bread, oh my God, every morning we used to get at all these hotels a basket of croissants like that, chocolate croissants, baguettes, butter, fresh fruit all the time. The coffee was very nice. I liked the coffee in Vietnam throughout the country. They had a good cup of coffee, a little bit different flavor than I'm used to, but very, very, very good. I would say excellent. This was the bathroom. Bill said, Jack, send me all your pictures. We'll go through them.
A little different from the Park Hyatt Seoul.
Yes, different look. You know, that Park Hyatt, though, was a great hotel. This was more French. This was as though you were staying at the Plaza Athénée in Paris, or, George V. That more of that kind of style with the marble floor. And this was, mind you, Hanoi, the communist headquarters of Vietnam, and right around the hotel area there was Hermes, the expensive store. And this is just around the Hanoi area. I'm sorry, the hotel area in Hanoi. I walked around, and they had, this was built by the French. You'll see a lot of these very traditional buildings that the French built. And Hanoi also sticks to about a 4 or 5 story height maximum in the buildings. And a lot of the housing, I think we might have some pictures, the families live in one tall building. Like the parents may live at the bottom, and some of the kids live 2 or 3 floors, and they live kind of as family units. This was a statue commemorating, I'm not sure which historical figure of the communist takeover, but they had a lot of statues. And again, you see the motorcycles, and when you want to cross the street, you have to kind of weave back and forth so they let you go. It's kind of a game. It was much worse in Saigon. Here, at least, there seemed to be less motorcycles, so you could make it across the street. And this is another monument to Ho Chi Minh, I believe, and celebrating the revolution. This was a big park area, again, right near the hotel, right kind of downtown Hanoi. Was very, very nice, beautiful. They had a lot of beautiful flowers, beautiful greenery. I thought it was a very attractive city, to tell you the truth. Not, as I say, not modern, not like Korea. The people certainly did not have the money. Korea, you saw lots of big automobiles, fancy automobiles. Here it was much more motorcycles. Also in Vietnam, they have a 100% tax on automobiles. So
And they're all imported, of
all
course.
imported, or there may be some made there. I don't remember. Or they come in from Korea, Japan. The motorcycles, I think you only pay a 20% tax, but if you want a car, it's 100%. So if the car is 20 grand, you pay another 20 grand in tax. So they did not have a ton of cars, but Saigon is getting more and more of them. But here you can see how lush the parks are. These were originally established by the French, but the Vietnamese people have kind of, kept them up. Certainly very, very well maintained.
What was the temperature like?
Much warmer. Hanoi, I was much more comfortable. I think the first day I was there, it was kind of wet, but not cold. And as we went on, I think it warmed up. The further south, when we ended up in Saigon, it was pretty hot. And this is January, going late January. But Hanoi was a little bit cooler.
So translate for us. What did it say?
This is another monument to Ho Chi Minh. And this could be where he's buried. Kind of his burial
mausoleum. Yeah, I can see it says Ho Chi Minh on the front.
Yep. This is another government building. Lots of government buildings. As far as jobs, they consider the best jobs are to work for the government. Then they feel that if you work for one of the banks or insurance companies, that kind of business comes second. And then if you're with one of the big corporations like Samsung, or you're making shoes for Reebok or Nike, they like that. Those are the premium jobs. The lower end jobs are when you have to work as a driver for like a rickshaw, or you're running a little takeout place. This was I think was one of the homes the French built for their governor. And it was very impressive, kind of you can see the French style with a little bit of an Asian flair to it. And the French built mostly using the color yellow. You'll see a lot of the buildings the French built, they painted yellow. There was reasoning behind it. I don't remember the story.
What was public transportation like there?
I'll tell you in a second, but this is where Ho Chi Minh lived, and they had given him some automobiles that they maintained. I don't believe he ever married, and they didn't talk too much about his personal life. So I don't know what the story was there. He was well educated. These was at his home. There was a beautiful koi pond that they maintained still. So you can see those. And this was right near his house. So his house kind of tied in with a big, beautiful park. And you can see it really was very, very, beautiful. That's the Ho Chi Minh's house that he lived in for many, many years. And again, his mausoleum. And this was just some more of the different structures that were around this whole park area and everything. But you can see the landscaping is really, quite impressive.
Very green.
Yeah. This was a kind of a temple. The Vietnamese, prior to the communists, they had like 4 animals that they very much prized. The turtle, they had a particular bird, and they used to make, that's what this is, they made memorialization with some of these animals that are very much part of their history. And this is one of the areas we went to that commemorated these animals. And this is hundreds of years old. This is showing you some of the antiquities. This group, once I had left Korea, I joined the Abercrombie and Kent group, and we had, there were a couple from Alabama, 2 couples from Florida, 3 couples who all knew each other from the San Francisco area. There was a single man, Bob, who was about 80. He only made it 4 days. He flew in from Los Angeles. He was not doing well physically. He flew back. There was a doctor from Alaska, married guy, but his wife didn't want to go, like my wife didn't want to go. And so he and I were the kind of 2 single people, and the rest were couples. But there were, I think, about 18 of us. We had a permanent guide with us from beginning to end, and she was just wonderful. And then each city we went into, so like in Hanoi, they would arrange for the busing. One bus would pick us up like in the morning. They'd say, okay, everybody, up at 6 or 6:30. Yeah, they get you up early. Breakfast, we're going to leave 7:30 for this tour. And we'd have a separate guide who knew that city well. So Teresa, our regular guide, would be with us. And she'd look after us. And then the other guide would take us to the local things. Like here you see some bonsai trees and different things. That big Buddha, and you see how they give, the thing with the Buddhas is they give all these beautiful flowers and fruit and stuff to the Buddha as kind of a gift to the afterlife. A lot of the, there's the bird that they hold in reverence. I mentioned the turtle. And this could be the museum. We went to it. Yes, this is the art museum. That's Teresa, our permanent guide. This was the National Museum in Hanoi, and they had a lot of very interesting Asian pieces that you can see. I'll just let our viewers. We went. This is the famous Hanoi Hilton. The Hoa Lo prison. This is where Senator John McCain was held, amongst many others. And this was built by the French. Maison Centrale. The French built this prison, and this shows you they have statues as to how the people were kept, and they used to chain you in. And you can see how they locked him in with the leg irons. The French did it to the Vietnamese, and then the Vietnamese used the same prison for the Americans and the other foreign nationals who fought in the war against them. This is a guillotine they used. And this is part of they have a little garden. They show you a wall. And this might have been where Senator McCain was. I think they had an actual place set apart. I can't see if you can see the sign, but I think this shows you where he actually was. Then they arranged for us to go in these these kind of rickshaws, and you have a driver who moves you along. And we went through all kinds of traffic with this. It was really quite fun.
Is he pedaling?
Yes, he pedals.
Yeah.
They made me go alone. Everyone else, they went in couples or whatever. Jack, they said, we'll take you alone. They didn't want to tire out the guy. And we drove through the city. This was a famous Catholic church that the French had built. A wealthy person who lived in Vietnam funded that whole Catholic church. Catholicism under the French was pretty strong in Vietnam. When the communists came, of course, they weren't promoting religion. And we went to a theater, a show. This is a kind of a water puppet show. It was quite unusual. I'd never seen anything like it. So we were in a theater, and they have a lake, not a lake, but kind of a pool of water, and singers. And they have, all these people, these puppets come to a show. They're big, and they're, I don't know how to describe it, but I think they're like almost on bamboo sticks that the puppeteers run them under the water. So you don't see them moving the puppets, but there it is. You can see one of the puppets in the water, but they literally might have had 20, 30 puppets sometimes. So it really, there it is. And you had people with the puppets in the water, and they're playing music throughout the whole thing. Those might be the people who ran the puppets. There it is, the Tang Long Water Puppet Theater. And this is owned by the government, but it seems to do pretty well, gets a big audience.
Mostly tourists or mostly
yeah,
natives?
I'd say mostly tourists, but it was definitely
Very
something to see.
unusual.
Yes, it really was. Something I would very much recommend for people viewing the show who are thinking of going to Hanoi. Don't miss that water puppet show. It was terrific. And we saw another kind of an opera in Saigon. I don't know if I have pictures of it. When we hit that part of the trip, we can, talk about that. But this water puppet show was very memorable. And we left there. And I don't have enough food pictures I'm showing you on this on this segment. So
So we'll have more next time.
we'll have more. I'll have to send you more food pictures. But the food was wonderful. We had a lot of different like spring rolls, and I told you how great the breakfast was. The pastries were terrific. But the food at night, we had a lot of, nice grilled chicken, grilled fish. They took very good care of us. Now, this could have been because of the particular trip I was with. These people knew the restaurants they wanted to bring us to. They run these trips continually, so if a particular restaurant is not as good as it used to be, they drop it from their trip roster. The hotel was terrific, treated us very nicely. There was a section you could see, I think, where Jane Fonda was in this hotel. She had stayed at that Metropole in the 60s, but I missed that part of it. All right, you can't see everything. And but Hanoi was just delightful. And I don't know if we have a few more Hanoi pictures, but after Hanoi, we went off to the airport and we flew to Da Nang, which we'll see the pictures the next show. But they had a magnificent beach. I don't know if it ran 7, 8 miles, but it reminded me almost of Copacabana Beach in Brazil, that kind of depth and width, and they're developing all along it with a lot of hotels. Development is a lot of Japanese money, Korean money, a little bit of Chinese money. The Vietnamese did not have a positive attitude toward China. They didn't seem that negative about the United States, but they always call it the American War and everything, but I think in reality, it was a great deal of their own war, where they had the communists fighting the quote-unquote corrupt communists fighting the corrupt capitalists. They were all corrupt. The government today in Vietnam, if you talk to the people there, will tell you it is very, very, I'll use the term corrupt. They feel that the government is just everything's a deal, every development is a deal. I don't think the people are happy. They think it's better than what they had in the sense they're not at war. The Vietnamese people kept telling us we've had hundreds and hundreds of years of war. At least now we're a little bit at peace. But I would say they're not happy with the structure of their government and what they feel is a tremendous amount of crony communism. So we're always afraid in the United States of crony capitalism. They've got crony communism. So I don't know how different it is.
How developed is the infrastructure in Hanoi?
Hanoi, I would not say is overly developed. I think to a degree they've kept it, a little bit traditional. Da Nang, you start to see much more development. And when we get to the hotel, we were at a beautiful, beautiful hotel on what was called the Monkey Peninsula, I believe it was called, a Monkey Island. And it's a huge, big property that somehow they don't tell you who really owns the hotel, but we were told it might be the president of Vietnam. So they got a long-term lease from the government for this spectacular property, sits on the ocean, and they built a very beautiful hotel. So the person they say owns it is a 35-year-old fellow with Vietnamese background who came from Uzbekistan. Where they dug him up, I don't know. But very nice property. Again, we'll see some photos. Great breakfast. All that was for me was terrific. I love the breakfast.
Well, you're in the food industry.
I'm in the food business, and I was looking at all new food items and ideas for things that we might want to bring over for the customers. And so I do. That's why, folks, I apologize if there's too many food shots as you go through this.
No,
but
not at all.
No, it didn't bother you?
Nah. Food never bothers me.
Food never
Jack.
bothers you. But so that was a lot of the Hanoi, and but surprisingly, a lovely city. Really, a lot of gardens. Whatever they say about the French, and I know the Vietnamese did not like being colonized. They didn't like the French. But the French did bring a lot of beautiful infrastructure, at least in Hanoi. Some of their buildings are just beautiful. The gardens, you can't take that away from them. So that's the positive note I'll say on Hanoi.
Very nice. It's almost hard to believe the hour has flown by. You make a wonderful guest on Travels with
I do all the talking.
And we will continue with your journey through Southeast Asia.
I'd be happy to continue.
In the next segment.
Thank you
Jackie.
very much, Bill.